Cheers, guys, and welcome to Uncle Scott's Pancast. Woo! If you're interested in what I am sipping on, wait until later in the Pancast and it will be revealed. In the old Pancast today, we're going to talk Thermoworks, surface probe thermometers and Thermopin 1s. We're going to talk some Emile Henry Bakeware. We're going to talk carbon steel. Got a little bit of a controversial carbon steel article I saw that we're going to go through. Going to talk a little bit about Matfer and Debouillet, a little bit more about beef, a little bit more about eggs, and more. Let's jump in and get started. Okay, first up, I want to talk about Thermoworks and some of the Thermopins. I've been in their affiliate program for a couple of years now, occasionally sell a few thermometers, and I talked to them this past week. Turns out their headquarters are only about 20 minutes away from where I live in Utah, of all places. Who would have guessed that? But they are going to do a special deal for us here at Uncle Scott's Kitchen, just for us, 25% off if you buy a Thermopin 1 and the Pro Surface Thermometer. So I've been using these in the videos for a couple of years now. Lots of people are familiar with Thermopin 1. This is a very popular and highly rated instant read thermometer. Not as many people know about these Pro Surface thermometers. But what I like about these things is they are fantastic for helping you preheat your pan evenly and get it to the correct temperature before you start cooking. So if you ever had trouble with eggs sticking or potatoes sticking, or you brown some chicken thighs and they just stick on your pan, it's often a problem with preheating and cooking at the correct temperature. If you have one of these surface probe thermometers, you can get it dialed in. It takes a lot of the guesswork out. You're not flicking water into a pan and waiting for water to roll around. You can get exact with this guy. The way you get the deal is you click the link below and then you add a Thermopin 1 to your cart. Then you add the Pro Surface Thermometer to your cart and go to checkout and look for a link that says add promo or discount code. Click on that and use code UncleScott25 and you will get 25% off. And at current prices on these, that turns into almost $70 off. So I think that is a screaming deal, and thanks to Thermoworks for thinking of us. A couple of new toys I got. This is an Emile Henry, or Henry, depending on your tolerance for poorly pronounced French. This is the 13x9 lasagna ceramic baking pan. Also got an 8x8 square-ish, and some of these ramekins. And I don't care if my wife does call me a wuss, I enjoy looking at ramekins online from time to time. I'm gonna make my son some mac and cheese and these things. I think he's gonna love it. Now, I do a lot of research before I buy a piece of cookware, and I note that America's Test Kitchen said this lasagna pan was not recommended. So I'm going out in the weeds by myself on this one. They said they didn't like the handles and that these more angled handles without loops made the pan extremely difficult to maneuver. Extremely difficult. I'm not sure if it's quite extremely difficult, and hopefully I'll be able to manage. But I have enjoyed my Emile Henrys. I've got the tagine, I've got the bread baker, and I've had good luck with my Emile Henry, so what the heck, I'm gonna give them a try. And I do like the fact that these are not made over in Asia. These are still made in France. And as much as we talk about Le Creuset or Le Creuset and Staub around here, we love the enamel cast iron. All those are made in France. They're bakeware made in China. So if you're looking for French-made bakeware and look at Le Creuset or Staub, it's not really made in France. This Emile Henry, still made in France, and I like that. Let's see, I want to get into an article I saw about carbon steel pans. And this was on Serious Eats, I believe. And they had a contributor, Taylor Murray, who wrote an article about their favorite skillet being from Moviel. And they had 12 skillets. They liked the Moviel. And their runner-up, I guess, was a Volrath. And I looked at their list of pans, and of the 12, I have done videos on at least 6 of them, and 2 of the other ones, the OXO and I think the BK, I kind of had, and I do still have those, but I kind of called the review off because they weren't really the traditional type carbon steel we normally talk about around here. Now, it's an opinion piece, so you can't nitpick too much, and I don't want to be too harsh because Lord knows if you look at my old videos, I make plenty of mistakes around here myself, and I still have a lot to learn. But I got to call out just a couple of things. They said even after completely seasoning each of the unseasoned pans, none of them were able to cook over easy eggs without sticking. None. So if you've got 6, 8, 10, 12 carbon steel skillets and you season them and cook eggs for the first time and you don't slide a single egg, I'm just going to say maybe, with all due respect, maybe it's either your seasoning method or your egg cooking method. Might need to brush up on those a little bit, because around here we show in video after video how you can take a brand new carbon steel skillet, season it once and just start cooking, and we get non-stick eggs almost every time. I occasionally do stick an egg. My success rate is probably 85, 90% with a new pan and my first egg. But if you season 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 and you don't get any sliding eggs, something is up. Also, you got 12 carbon steel skillets and they did not include a debouillé. I've been reviewing debouillé stuff around here for 5 years and I think it is absolutely top quality carbon steel, and I don't see how a debouillé was not included. And then they talked about the Smithy farmhouse carbon steel skillet, which I've done a couple of videos on this guy. And I want to call this one out in particular because they said they just could not justify the cost of the skillet. Okay, fair enough. It's an opinion piece. It is a very expensive carbon steel skillet. But they said it could neither cook an even crepe nor over easy eggs without sticking. Okay, I've done a couple of videos on this Smithy pan, and here's what I want to point out. I did a first cook and cooked my very first egg on video in that Smithy farmhouse carbon steel skillet, and sliding egg, very first one. Crepes in the big review, got my wife to make some crepes, and non-stick crepes. So they didn't get any sliding eggs, they didn't include a debouillé, and they had trouble with everything sticking in a pan that I showed everything was sliding. Maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, sometimes it's the pan, and maybe sometimes we need to brush up on our cooking and seasoning skills. I don't want to be too harsh because Lord knows I make my share of mistakes. Talking about beef. We've been talking about short ribs versus chuck roast recently. Brian Green, 1971, wrote in, says he is a professional cook in a restaurant. And he's talking about these cuts of meat. He says there are actually 3 types of beef ribs. I had no idea about this. He says there are plate short ribs, chuck short ribs, and back ribs. And he goes on to talk about chuck roast. And he says sometimes in a restaurant when you order short ribs, boneless short ribs, that is actually chuck roast that they have cut up in the back. Who knew? That's nice to know. See a couple more carbon steel pan notes. Debouillé. I had one guy ask me if they were discontinuing some of their pans. No, they are not. What is going on is people are going to the Debouillé site and they are sold out of a lot of the Mineral B Pro models at the moment. I talked to Debouillé and more on the way. I will let everybody know when those are back in stock. Someone else asked me about Matfer. Where do I buy my Matfer pans? I get all my Matfers from Amazon. Matfer, they don't sell their pans directly to consumers like Debouillé does. A lot of theirs go through restaurant supply stores. You can occasionally find those online. But for consumers, most of the Matfers come through Amazon. That's where I get mine. Let's see, Jay Beberg says he's been using his Debouillé pans on a gas stove and they bow up in the middle. Is that a problem? Those come from the factory with a slight upward bow in the bottom of the pan. Lots of manufacturers do this. Lodge does it. I think Matfer is starting to do it. And what that upward bow does is to help mitigate potential warping problems. It's just a fact of physics. When you heat a carbon steel pan, the metal expands. Heat makes the metal expand. That expansion has to go somewhere, and it is infinitely more preferable for it to go upwards. And it may create a little bit of a donut sometimes in a carbon steel skillet where you get a little ring of oil if your oil is not deep enough in the pan. But that is infinitely preferable to that deformation going downwards and turning the pan into a spinner, especially if it doesn't go away. So if it goes upwards and then kind of contracts when the pan cools, that is as good as you can do until someone can change the laws of physics. Let's see, Peter Boy, TRAKS, Peter Boy Tracks, got on to me because in the last video I showed myself writing in pen in one of my cookbooks. And he says I should just print out notes and keep those as almost bookmarks in a cookbook. I disagree here. I enjoy writing in my cookbooks. Not only do the notes help me the next time I make the recipe, and they're there on the recipe, if I record the date and who was here and who I cooked for and what everybody thought of it, it's also kind of like a little bit of a food diary. It's kind of nice to have those memories in my cookbook. And also, life is too short. I just want to throw out here, your cookbooks, once you pass on, maybe your descendants might want some of your cookbooks. Who knows? They might all be on iPads someday. They very well might get boxed up and be sold for 50 cents or so at your estate sale. So nobody is going to care anyway. You might as well use them and enjoy them while you got them. Talking about eggs. We've been talking about eggs a bunch around here lately. And I mentioned in one of the videos, I take my eggs out of the fridge and let them warm up a little bit before I cook them. Lots of people wrote in from Europe, and many of you guys wrote in, and it's all a variation on this with the kind of free range or more natural, I guess you would say, eggs over in Europe. They're not washed. There's a membrane on the egg, and you can leave those unrefrigerated. Here in America, the eggs are washed and they are refrigerated. We bring them home from the grocery store and they go right in the fridge. So if you're in Europe, and you're going to cook eggs for breakfast, there is no need to let them warm up if they are obviously already at room temperature. If you're in America and your eggs are almost frozen, let them warm up. Let's see, if you're interested in what I am pouring, this is some Glen Kinchy. Glen Kinchy. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. One thing I've learned on YouTube is that you never have to worry about pronouncing something incorrectly, because if you do, people are on you like a pack of hyenas, and they will let you know within milliseconds. So I think it's Glen Kinchy. And I got in trouble for saying the word Scotch here one time. People were saying it was offensive to people from Scotland, but it clearly says single malt Scotch whiskey on the label, so I feel pretty comfortable saying that. And this says it was distilled in 2007. So thanks to whoever was working on this Scotch 17, 18 years ago. Cheers to you. Some pretty good stuff. Now I do note that I am drinking Scotch whiskey out of some Waterford leaded crystal, which came from Ireland. Is that going to start a little bit of a kerfuffle? We do have St. Patrick's Day coming up after all, so maybe next week it will be a Guinness. Who knows? Little production note here. I got one of these iPhone 15 Pro Maxes here, and I was trying to use it in this little holder to record some video here. And what I've come to find out the hard way is that little holder squeezed both sides of this iPhone, and I looked at the thing, and apparently if you squeeze both sides of the iPhone, it makes an emergency phone call. So apparently my iPhone has called emergency services, and I may have swatted myself. So if someone busts in with a gun here in just a moment, it's been nice knowing you. Regardless, look on the screen for links to other pancasts you might find enjoyable. Check out that Thermoworks deal if you're looking to upgrade your thermometers. Thank you for watching. See you again next time on Uncle Scott's Pancast.